Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to the Mount Brydges Arena Building Committee July 10th meeting of 2023. I guess first would be those in attendance. We have regrets from Sandy Hipple and I'm hurt for Mike, so we don't know what's happening there. Next up, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Nobody's figured out how to make any money out of this yet. Next would be approval of the minutes. Were there any questions?
Nope.
From the minutes? No. Looking for a motion made by Mayor Grantham, seconded by Councilor Wilsey. I guess I'm in favor too. Awkward when it's a small committee. All right, and that brings us to the business of tonight. Oh, I guess also in attendance we have,
Stephen Maudsley.
Stephen Maudsley. Sorry, Steve. How are you? From A-Link Plus. Is it A-Link Plus? A-Link.
Yeah. A plus.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just call
A-Link.
We have software at work that's very similar names, so always messes me up. All right, so we had the open house back a couple of weeks ago and invited the public to participate and give their opinions. And as we can see, there's we did forward the comments, which I forgot to bring with me. So I guess, does anybody have any questions on any of the comments that are given first? Maybe we should start there.
I think if we just maybe go through the list of the different points and get different feedback, might be my.
Can do that.
On ice pads, I know there was a little bit of discussion we had before. Could we speak
Can you
to?
turn your mic on?
Yep. Could we go through just the ice pads and just a little bit about population? And I know we had a bit of this discussion before, but just for the public, so they could hear about what ice pads are required, what we are in the area, and how
All right.
we got.
So for the public, we were having a discussion about industry standard on population base versus the number of ice pads. So I'll ask Director Littleborn to go through that.
Thank you, Chair. Just industry standard for number sheets of ice per population is 1 sheet of ice per 10,000 population. So Strathroy-Caradoc currently has 4 sheets of ice for a population of 24,000 people. Now, we need to appreciate that that's population. That doesn't necessarily mean user base. So when we look at Strathroy-Caradoc having 4 sheets of ice with a population of 24,000, ideally, if you go by the stats, 3 sheets of ice should be sufficient. But based on what we've seen with Mount Brydges minor hockey, as well as neighboring municipalities in our area that don't have ice, such as Adelaide, Metcalfe, and so on, those users tend to come towards Strathroy-Caradoc for their needs. So, but overall, across Canada, the average is 10,000 population per 1 sheet of ice. That was the conversation we were having.
Was there a point to why you were wondering about that?
The main reason for that point is I'm looking at most of the comments that were coming up, and I don't believe these are shared in the public meeting minutes. At least they weren't in the e-scribe, but almost all the comments were saying they wanted 2 pads of ice. So I'm not saying we should have 2 pads of ice, but most of the comments we did get back said that they wanted 2 pads of ice, so we just wanted to bring that up.
So I think from our homework that we did with the user groups in the last council when we had them all make presentations, minor hockey and figure skating are both using ice in Strathroy and outside of the municipality. However, should we add another ice pad, there would be too much ice time for all the user groups. And then if you look at the trends and statistics about where recreation is going, and ice sports should, I'm not going to say it will, but it should in the future decline as a percentage of the population base that's using ice, 4 sheets or 5 sheets of ice would be way, way too many in a municipality. Plus the cost to build would be very, very significant to build 2 sheets of ice.
Just a point, Chair, and also Director Lilborn's comment about Adelaide Metcalf, but we have a lot of kids coming up Mount Brydges from Glencoe since their arena has closed. That's part of the boom in hockey registration at Mount Brydges. If and when their arena does open up, that may see a shift of kids back to Glencoe too. So just want to make that comment. There's a lot of Glencoe, had that confirmed last week. There's a lot of Glencoe kids playing hockey at Mount Brydges now.
Even when we met our user groups, the Glencoe Arena wasn't under renovation yet, right? No, it was still status quo as before. So, well, we recognize that the Mountain Brydges user groups are using more ice than what one ice pad can handle. As a municipality overall, the drain would be the cost of maintaining the ice pads versus the amount of revenue we could get. Because a lot of supply and demand come into play, right? So the more supply you have, the less you can charge to fill the ice time. So,
if I may, the other item we want to be aware of is there's still that potential for a private twin pad arena being built within a 10-minute drive of Mount Brydges. So that would give you 5 sheets of ice in less than a 20-kilometer radius of area. So that's a significant amount of ice. So I would, understanding and appreciating what's identified in the comments, there's 11 comments. We're estimating between 200 and 250 people attended on this past evening on June 20th. So all in all, yes, there's a high number of comments that are on this page, but there's also a significant number of people who chose not to leave comments. So that should be also taken into consideration as well.
all right, with the seating capacity, there's a comment about extra seating, 100 seats. So I'm assuming that they recognize that there was an extra 100 seats from what the Mount Brydges currently has. Yes, it's a very vague comment. So as far as the walking track goes, there were some comments about a walking track. The people that I talked to at the meeting were okay with using the gymnasium as a walking track, just as long as it was programmed and there was time available.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of them, when we explained what we had learned, or when I explained what I had learned about the walking tracks in the rink being too cold for the seniors to use, they all kind of went, oh, yeah, I suppose. Oh, sorry. As far as the walking track goes, I'll repeat what I said so the public can hear. Most of the people that I spoke to were okay with using the gymnasium as a walking track as long as it was program time. When I explained about what we had learned on our tours, that the walking tracks that were in the rinks were too cold for the seniors to use, most of them seemed to understand that and didn't think about that piece. Did anybody else have any experience with those?
Just similar comments.
Yeah, nothing any different.
So the program suggestion, I did have somebody ask about the library potentially moving there. Do you have something to add there?
Yeah, no, thank you. And before I'd even seen this, I can't remember if I CC'd you on it or not, Chair, but I did reach out to the warden and the CAO asking if any possibility of twinning with any of the county services, whether it's the library, but there are some interesting points on it, childcare. It's something, the CAO did indicate there's nothing on the horizon now, but my comment was, well, we need to get on the list if there's something coming our way, right? So, interesting ideas. I like you know, the programming ideas, I think they're great. The library, the childcare, whatever we could add to the facility.
So there was one comment there about having a room for the Mount Brydges Lions Club to meet in. There will certainly be rooms available for meetings. There won't be one specifically for any one user group, with the exception of possibly minor soccer or minor hockey and figure skating, the primary users of the rink. I had a couple people talk to us about having a bar in the facility. I did talk to them about the discussion we had last time about possibly putting a second floor over the lobby, given that the ceilings will be high on either side. Again, that's going to be a budget decision at the time of design, whether or not we would even have space for that. I think typically, even if you look at West Middlesex, which would have an equivalent number of users, the only time a bar functions is when the Rockets play. Otherwise, it's not a financially viable operation.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, we were to think big and try and get like an actual bar or restaurant, which currently does not exist in Brydges, but so there were some hockey-specific comments that weren't really of any great importance, just to acknowledge Mount Brydges players that have gone on to success, and I would probably say that should more be a sports Hall of Fame rather than just a hockey Hall of Fame, because there are people from Mount Brydges that have done great things outside of hockey. As far as community space goes, so for the public, is it possible to put the proposed multi-purpose proposal up on the screen? Steve, do you have that on you by any chance?
Sorry, I'm trying to find some stuff, but my internet connection is not helping me.
So for the public that didn't attend, the concept, which was the favored concept of the committee, had a gymnasium, a rink with seating for 250, 300 plus standing room for a significant number more. Had a very large lobby, which could be used for programming space, but it also had a multi-purpose space which would be of comparable size to the Westcast room up at Gemini, along with a full kitchen so that you could use it for banquets. So the comments they had about community space, I think it's important to talk about this in detail, because the recommended option was in the exact location of the Caradoc Community Center, which I believe that these are the functions that would be mostly impacted by the removal of the Caradoc Community Center. So it must have community spaces and ability for indoor, outdoor events. We need a wedding and community area. Don't forget about non-hockey activities. Ensure sufficient space for these, i.e. seniors, non-sport youth events, activities, scouting, cadets, etc. Ensure there's enough public space for activities such as senior activities, and then somebody was asking for a layout of washrooms, multi-purpose room, kitchen, and gym. So, did anybody receive any verbal comments during the meeting that were of any significance in regards to the community space? Yes, Mayor.
No comments, but seeing those are actually good comments, because it allows us to highlight what is in the proposed complex, correct? So no questions that night, but just I'd like to see these because we can show people we've addressed all those needs, correct?
I had a few comments on that, and just from what I heard from the people who were there, they liked the space, they liked the community space that we had. They were excited when I told them that the community service department was gonna be looking, they're running out of space in Strathroy and looking to bring more things to Mount Brydges. There was a lot of excitement about that, and just with the multi-purpose room and being able to have activities and things for the kids to do in Mount Brydges, there was a lot of excitement around that.
Yeah, I had a fair number of comments as well. I think when, you know, it was hard for people to look at the drawing and try to imagine what was the multi-purpose space that was on the drawing. And when most of the people have been in the Westcast room, when you say it was that big, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, you can do lots of stuff in that. Certainly anything the seniors programming does can fit in that space, because it does currently. You know, I had a fair amount of discussion about banquets and what the possibilities were for having banquets in that drawing as we had it, and just people had a hard time coming to terms with we could use the gym space for a banquet or the arena floor. You know, it's certainly a paradigm shift for having a banquet not in a banquet hall in Mount Brydges, because they've pretty much always had one available. But also for the general public, with the liquor license rules that changed about 15 years ago, maybe. You know, the Stag and Doe business has pretty much disappeared. People have looked for, there we have the preferred drawing up on the screen. You know, the wedding business has gone to venues that are specifically set up for weddings, like barns and places like Caradoc Sands. So there's certainly still being weddings booked in banquet halls. They are certainly getting less and less. That trend doesn't seem to be slowing down any. Does anybody have any other comments to add about?
No, actually, and following up on that, Councillor, I was going to ask Director Lilborn, did you or Darren know off the top of your head how many times, I know it was COVID, but even just coming out of COVID last year or prior, how many banquets or weddings were ever booked into the?
Pre-COVID, we probably averaged maybe 4 a summer. Not very many. We have 0 bookings in the Caradoc Community Center currently for the summer. I did hear during the open house that, you know, if we had it affordable and, you know, it's too expensive to use. Our rates are really based off of what everyone else is charging. So we try to be the happy medium. We don't want to be the highest and we don't want to be the lowest. I did, after the meeting, call around to other municipalities in our area, but also other municipalities of similar size that provide a similar venue. We're not the most expensive, but we're not the cheapest. The facility that is a twin to the Caradoc Community Center, which is the L.C. Craig Community Center in North Middlesex, actually is more expensive to rent than the Caradoc Community Center is to rent. So we do try to make sure that we keep our fees affordable, but we also understand that we have the other ratepayers in the community that we need to be cognizant of as well, because the more money the facility loses, the more taxes we need to offset that loss. So we try to find a happy minimum, or the halfway point, right?
The next section was about the kitchen. So there was actually a fair amount of discussion that I had about the kitchen. Lots of people wanted it to be moved, or the rooms in general moved around so that the kitchen could access both the gymnasium and the multi-purpose space, and the washrooms moved somewhere else. I didn't actually see that as a bad option, and if it could front onto the lobby as well, that gives you lots of options to sell stuff or to turn those spaces into something different. I mean, I could even see with the size of that lobby that be used for some kind of community event. You know, certainly when we were touring the Forest Arena, how they use their lobby, which was not near as big as this, kind of opened my eyes into saying, okay, there's lots of opportunity here for someone who's willing to think a little differently about how to use spaces, especially in the summertime when maybe the ice might not be being used. Then, you know, access doors can be, you don't have to worry so much about traffic going in and out in different doors. But certainly the intent is that that would be a full functioning kitchen that would be capable of cooking for a banquet, and also be used for programming such as the Junior Chefs program. Anybody else have anything to add about that? No? Then there was the next section about the rental costs, which we kind of just covered. Then there was a lot of comments about proposed partnerships. The Chippewa that Thames continues to be a partner, although they haven't been an active participant for the last little bit, but they're certainly on the books as being a potential partner. Yes, Colin?
Yeah, and don't mind, I'll follow up on the Chippewas. I had this conversation with Director Lilborn. Initial meeting with Chief French shortly after taking office. We talked about the arena. Since then, in complete honesty, I've reached out 3 or 4 times without any response, including the Chippewa rep on Tri-Township Arena, without any response. I just need to be completely above board about it. But I do know they're going through an election, so wait, see what happens. Their election, I believe it's this month, and we'll try to reach out again to them. But it hasn't been for lack of trying.
And I know I had a fairly in-depth conversation with one couple about the YMCA partnership, and I liken the conversation back to when we were looking at building an indoor pool, and at that point in time, the recreation department was not set up for programming. However, now we are. So I think we've proven that we can do programming just as good as the Y can. So the necessity of having a very, very expensive municipal asset being run by a third party isn't necessary right now. Did you guys have any other comments on that?
No, just one, and I'll park it till the very end when we get down about everything. But I did highlight or underline the one comment about take your time and apply for funding when available. 2 years is not long. I just wanted to, I'll park that one for now. But
okay. Talk
about it at the very end when we start talking about sites and all that, because I do have a comment on that one.
Greg, did you have any parts on the partnership side of things?
Not really on the partnerships. There was an interesting comment that you brought about having a partner restaurant, but that may be down when we're looking at fundraising or different options if there is someone who wants to partner with that. The only other part is with rental costs, and I don't really want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but just the comment that Director Lilborn had said with we had 0 rentals and we're in the middle of the pack for rentals. 0 rentals at whatever price is still $0. So if we're trying to get income out to help pay for the facility, again, not for tonight, but that's a different discussion.
I can comment on that quickly. We didn't take operation of the Caradoc Community Center over again until January. Actually, it was the end of January. That does not, brides and grooms for planning weddings are looking for 12 months. So there was no certainty they would have the Caradoc Community Center. So that the fact that we don't have any banquets or weddings could be just an indication that they weren't available early enough for the planning process for that to occur. So I'm not stressing over that at this point because it's, again, it was 6 months that we've had access to that community center again.
There was some comments about sustainable design, which, Stephen, do you have any comments about that in terms of what, I mean, and again, for the public, this is very, very preliminary and high level, but what kind of thoughts did you guys have or conversations did you have around potentially sustainable design ideas that could be incorporated into this kind of a concept?
I mean, we do that with all our buildings, and we try to, find out what makes sense and what doesn't. Obviously, a well-insulated building costs less to heat and cool. Looking at, there's gonna be a lot of roof there. Do you look at solar as part of the thing, but then you have to work with somebody to do that. These are things that are automatically part of the next stages of the process, where we would look at, do ground source, what are the things that make sense? So, obviously, if you said to us, we'd like, go for 4 green globes or for platinum LEED, net zero and zero carbon, we can do that. The question is, where's your confidence? Are there funding that can help you do that? Because the 80-20 rule works here. Take 20% to get 80% of the benefit, and then the next 20% take 80% of the fee. So, but our intention is always to design well a building that is a solid building envelope that gives long-term durable building with as low a heating and cooling coefficient as we can. The ice pad stuff, there's efficiencies we put in there, save heat from that system. There's some of those systems we put in place. So yes, that is something we automatically do as a firm, and we will present options to you during the process. If it's decided in an integrated design process is where you bring a team together, you're basically all of yourselves plus the consulting team, and we sit down and we set target goals for the facility. Again, a bit early for that, but not far off in the process. Does that answer your question, Bert?
Yes, it does, thank you. Then we had a group of comments around programming that wasn't necessarily arena bent. So I'm just going to read those out for the public. What about the loss of the soccer field? Will a soccer field be put in place of the old arena? Is there a chance more parking will be needed? Is there a chance more of the soccer fields will be lost? What about the smaller soccer fields for the younger soccer players? What happens to the ball diamond? Hope we are not losing it under the current preferred location that's nowhere near the ball diamond, so the ball diamond would not be affected. The building, arena, and community center is one building with large parking lots. That was one of the concepts that we did consider and deemed not, well, anything's feasible with a lot of money, but it was definitely not a well-designed building to join an arena with the current Caradoc Community Center. Would that be the correct way of wording it? Yes. With very different roof lines, no loads to worry about. You'd have to move around your entire building systems and still end up with an old building that's not really set up for modern recreation needs. Don't lose soccer fields and consider an area with turf for local baseball and soccer clubs. Did anybody else have any comments that they heard differently that night, or?
No, just the same comments, but I think after we reassured folks that 2 fields were staying, just a small youth field was going to be lost, and who knew or knows what down the road what might happen at the current Tri-Township Arena. I think that went away to allay people's fears after we had that conversation. There wasn't, didn't seem to be too much concern anyways.
Greg?
Nothing beyond what's yours already been said.
Yeah, I know that Rob and I had a significant conversation with the chair of the Mount Brydges, or the Delco Bridge Minor Soccer Association, and some of the troubles that they were having with the 4 soccer fields, I guess, that they currently have, and the different sizing options available to them. And if I was, sorry, I sneezed. If I remember correct, the 2 soccer fields that are beside the arena are not really the appropriate size for what they need. Was that correct, Rob?
I think they are.
In the opinion of, yes, but soccer fields can vary in size.
Yeah.
Strathroy United Football Club has different sized football fields. So they got a couple full-size fields. One is a different size than the other, but there's still regulation. And they have smaller soccer fields off to the side, which is for their young groups, and then they've taken also some small fields and created what they call a 3/4 field, which goes across the soccer field. So there is the ability to take the smaller soccer fields that they have at the Caradoc Community Center and put it across the existing full-size fields. To Mayor Grantham's point, there is the potential of reestablishing that small soccer field potentially over when we take the other Tri-Township Arena down as well. So we just need to find a way that best utilizes that space most efficiently.
So maybe this would be a good time to talk about the property as a whole. So the idea here is not just to look at the arena site, but to look at the entire property for what potential recreation programming could take place where the current Tri-Township Arena sits, where the current fields sit. Is there a better way to lay things out? And that will take time to work its way through.
Absolutely. So we've already done a bit of a high-level master site plan with the old arena with some different options. Again, that was just to kind of get us a feel for what could go where. The current site, I don't think you're able to, because we've tried so many different variations already of what way to lay that facility out, which is going to have the most efficient use of the land. So the design that was up behind us, the preferred site is really the layout of, I think, is the most efficient use of that space. I think what it is, it's the rest of the space that we need to have a bit of a reimagining session of what the overall piece of land will look like when we get this facility up and going. Because by the time we get the facility up, we're going to keep Tri-Township Arena operating until we get the new facility up and running, right? And then we're going to be, a period of time before we can take the other building down. So.
And I think it would be a fair comment also to say that as Mount Brydges continues to expand, this is not going to be the only park in Mount Brydges that will have sports fields. There will start to be sports fields cropping up in other locations just because of necessity and certainly the numbers that they have for Delco Bridge are pretty astounding for soccer. They've got a very, very active program. So I'm sure that we'll be looking at their needs in the future for other locations as the community continues to expand. So then we get to the part, I think, which was the real meat and potatoes of the meeting on the 20th. Is the community okay with the preferred site or are they not? So there are 3 groups of comments, one for a different site, one for the existing Township Arena, and one for where the preferred site is, which is where the existing Caradoc Community Center is. So for the different site, the comments were use the field by the Ford dealership, wait to build an arena out of village in the future. The land that was proposed from the Ford dealership has not even been considered. I know is under town boundaries at this moment, and the land is part of the proposal for consideration for expansion. For September agenda, however, it needs to be considered. The Gemini land was not in boundaries when it is built. We need to think outside of the box. Why must a new arena be in the village of Mount Brydges? Why not a rural site? Should we not, as a council and community, look at what other lands may be available? And I think that this arena is needed. However, I think more thought needs to be placed on the location. For comments that would be for the existing Tri-Township Arena site, one was revamp the old arena. I feel like the space in front of the current arena would be able to hold a single pad if we looked into this, so I'm assuming they mean the current parking lot. That's the only possible place it could be. Good initial proposal. Important to keep soccer field for the association. All kids 800 plus. Arena, add more fields. Ensure that the old arena site is for recreational use only. No other residential buildings in this area in contract. And the municipality at this point, I can say, is not considering doing anything other than recreation-based uses for that site. And then for where the existing Caradoc Community Center site, the comments were, love the community center and arena concept, let's build it. Location is great, good plans to move forward with. Great concepts, thanks for including community members. Excellent work, fully support decision on location, design, site device pad and planning, thanks. Prefer to have existing center replaced. Site is great. This type of facility is obsolete. 3 years as a vaccination center and it was not missed. People need to use their heads and not their hearts. Use the site and get rid of the community center. So they were fairly even in terms of the written comments. So I guess I'd like to ask all the people who were there just to share what their experience was in the verbal comments. And Craig, do you want to start?
Yeah, a few people asked me why we didn't look anywhere else, or what other sites were considered. Mostly, a lot of the same that we here. A lot of people I talked to, once they saw it, they were concerned about the soccer fields and losing that, but once they realized they were staying, it was good. And the minority was people who wanted to keep the Caradoc Community Center. There's a couple questions I have under iterations that I'll bring up there, but for the most part, it lined up well with this. The only people did want to look at it potentially somewhere else, but then the flip side is more people liked the fact that it was within walking distance, and we were holding Canada Day there, not too far away, and they liked that it was within walking distance. People could go there. There wasn't really anything negative except for parking, which we were going to deal with.
And I think in terms of it being in the heart of the town, you know, prior to the election, and when I was formulating my own opinion about whether or not we needed to replace it, that was one of the comments that came out loud and clear, was that, you know, the whole property, not just the Tri-Township Arena, but the whole property with the Lions Park is the heart of Mount Brydges. That is what I kept hearing over and over again. And when one of the comments that really stuck out to me was that, you know, even though a woman had been a Mount Brydges member her entire life, all her friends were all met at the arena as their kids either played hockey or figure skating. And to me, that was a comment that really stuck home. But when you talk about looking at other events outside of rink uses, such as the Canada Day celebrations, the arena being in that location to support those larger functions leaves lots of possibilities open. You know, certainly you've got you know, very accessible public washrooms. If it were to rain, you'd have options to potentially move something inside if need be. You'd have the kitchen and the banquet halls for space. I mean, I can think of a number of events I've attended up at the Gemini where the Westcast room has been open from the outside, so that you can get in and grab a hot dog or something, or sit down and have some food, but the actual event is outside. there's lots of possibilities there. Mayor Gunton?
No, and I'll make a last comment that may be surprising. I agree with all the comments. I think this is an ideal site, and I think of West Middlesex. That's a complex. That's a recreation complex. So slowly, Mount Brydges is going to have a very ideal recreation complex. I would just like to say this. I'm all in favor of this site as one of the proponents of it and espoused it and pushed for it. But I guess this is where my comment comes in, where I underline the fact about the funding. I think we do need to have a degree of flexibility, because you don't know what's going to come down the pipe or around the horizon. We picked a site that is going to be, for lack of a better word, shovel ready, and we could build tomorrow. And that was the lens I was looking at. It is, what land do we have today? But depending what's going to happen with funding and what pushes that out, I think if we're 99.5% on this, we still need to have that degree of flexibility, because you don't know what could come, right? We could be, depending on funding, Councillor, we could be 3 or 4 years down the road before we have to make a decision. But again, love this site. This would be absolutely, because I pushed for it. I think we just need to have a little bit of flexibility. I think the plans themselves allow for that, and I probably aren't articulating that properly, but I think we need to just have a little bit of a bend, and because you don't know what could come down the pipe, and when the boundary changes happen and everything. But I agree with all that. This is great. It allows for a complex. Just a little bit of flexibility. You don't know what could happen. Someone could come along after, and you don't know what the donation may be, right? So that's all I'm just trying to say, is that when we make the final decision and the facts that are in front of us. But again, I'm in favor of this site. Again, not sure if I articulated that properly, but
No, and I think, when we start talking about next steps, there's gonna have to be a recommendation to council at some point. I think with only 3 members of the committee here, I don't wanna go to next steps tonight. But, at some point, we're gonna have to go to council to say, okay, so this was the preferred concept. Are you prepared to move forward with the $30 to $35 million project? And that's a pretty big ask of council.
Well, the reason I brought that up, Councillor, and it just happened, Chatsworth. I looked on the community of Chatsworth. My sister's the CAO there. They've had an arena in the works, I think, my dates may be wrong, since 2017. They just had a few delays with funding and that, so they're moving ahead and trying to do what they can. We make the recommendation, but there may be delays, and something in those delays may come up where you go, that site looks good because somebody offered us something, whatever that may be.
Yep, go ahead.
If I may, for us to, if a site's chosen, so say the decision is to choose 565 Lions Park Drive.
Yep.
The next step for staff is to start doing geotechnical. Right, so we're gonna need to do soil samples, we're gonna need to do, water table. Maybe the site won't even take the arena. We don't know that 100%. We're 99% certain it will, but you never know. It's the same thing with donated land. If someone comes forward and says, oh yeah, we'll give you that land, but 75 or 100 years ago it was a swamp. It's not going to be able to take the weight of an arena unless we spend a whole whack of money on stabilization. So staff need to know where we're going, or we're just going to continue to have a circular conversation about a site. So at some point in time, council will need to say, move forward, if and we continue to move forward, we do the geotech, we spend the money, and then someone comes forward and says, I'll give you $15 million to build it over there, the council has a decision to make. You take the money that you spend doing all of the geotech and all of the design work, site plan, all of that prep work, throw it out the window and start new because someone's giving you $15 million.
Yeah.
That's always a possibility.
That's all I'm saying, just the door open,
Yeah, no,
just a little bit.
The skate park, when I got here in 2013 was when, and that had already been talked about before I got here.
Yeah.
So it took 15 years to build the skate park that we have today. So I don't want it to take 15 years to build an arena.
Nope.
It does take time.
Yep.
So Stephen, you were there, and I know that A-Link was in lots of heavy discussion on the other side of the poster boards that I was on. So I'm curious to know what your take was on the location for and against.
Every conversation I had was favorable. I mean, obviously some would like 2 pads that came up, but it's like, okay, well, where's the money? You know, if you want a second pad, we could fit it on the site, we could use a soccer field. So, the site offers a ton of, like, just a straight site discussion. It's land you own, this is always worth something. Developer donated land, I mean, I don't want to despise developers, but they're in it for the money. And so they don't give away land that's good, unless they're very altruistic. So you've got land, you've got stuff, it's easy to build a soccer field somewhere else, if that comes down to it, that you need to add a second pad here. So the site offers enough flexibility and most people I talk to, you know, if something couldn't happen, well, this is good, okay. You know, that's how I was hearing from people. I think Mike was in more in-depth stuff, and I wish he was here because he would be able to respond more quickly. I was trying to get feedback from people as they were walking out and getting to go back and do stickers and stuff. So I wasn't specific to the plan on the board when I was hearing from people, but in most cases we were hearing fairly positive that this is a good thing, we need to get going. And I think Rob's comment about there's a lot of process stuff that's next steps and to get a project moving further forward. So yeah, I mean, I didn't have anybody who was irate, anybody who said they're gonna not vote for the mayor anymore or whatever statements.
There was a couple.
Yeah, they might have said that to you, I don't know. But so I didn't hear anything super negative. You know, there's lots of I would like this, I would like this. It's like buying a car.
Yeah.
There's people saying that everyone wants everything until the price sticker comes in, and then they all shirk back to what is really important. So that's more what I was hearing. And the community space, I think getting it all in one building was a nice touch. And the idea that maybe across the field when the old arena comes down, we can put another soccer pitch or something there. So there needs to be some discussion about what are the next steps for that part of the site once we get moving ahead on this one.
Did either of the 2 staff members over there tonight have any comments to add in terms of was anything heard any different, or what you think a ratio was of people who were adamant that the Caradoc Community Center should remain in place?
I had similar experience as the rest of you. There were some comments about wanting to keep the Caradoc Community Center. The majority of the comments were the site was a good location. Excited about having a gym and being able to do programming rather than having to take their kids elsewhere, whether it was into Kamoka or into Strathroy. Paul and Kate, who were both there, similar experiences. Lots of people excited about programming and what we as a municipality can bring to that community, similar to what we've been able to offer here in Strathroy. The current setup of the Caradoc Community Center doesn't lend well to programming it for recreation-based activities. And I think it was nice to have the pickleball lines on the floor at the Caradoc Community Center, because you could see how close the back line of the pickleball court was to the outside wall. The wall should be about another 6 to 15 feet outward, so they have room to back and run backwards without running into a wall. So it kind of gave you a good sense of how small that space is compared to what a recreation center should look like. So when we started talking about that, their curiosity started to pique, and some of the options that could be done inside that facility. A lot of conversations around what did you do with the arena floor in the summertime. I've said to this committee that air conditioning that space, you'll sell it, you'll rent it out like that. There was a lacrosse going on up at West Middlesex on the weekend, and like I walked into the arena and almost suffocated, it was so hot, right? So if you have the ability to climatize the space, that becomes a huge selling point for that space as well. So all in all, very similar comments to what everyone's been saying here as well.
Darren, would you have any?
Fortunately, I was not there that night, so I cannot provide any comment.
Why it went so smooth.
So I would say my experience is probably about 70% in favor of the location, 30% saying that the Caradoc Community Center should stay. The one thing about moving to a different location is, looking at the proposed price tag of what this is, a $30 to $35 million recreation facility. If we had to move that concept to another piece of property, we had to pay for that piece of property, and we had to pay for pipes to go out there, then that concept's probably not going to be built, because that price tag would probably be beyond what the municipality could afford. So I think that's an important part of the discussion to have with people when they say that, you haven't looked at other options. Well, no, we haven't looked at other options because we don't own any land, but we also are aware of those costs that would come with moving to a different piece of property. And they will be significant dollars being spent. Does anybody have anything else to add on that topic? So then there was some comments about parking, that the parking lots weren't big enough, where we're gonna push the snow. Somebody said to minimize the parking at the new site, and overflow parking at the old arena for larger events. Sure, there was adequate parking for arena and secondary activities taking place. So I think when we did the numbers, the current design as it was showing had more spaces than the Tri-Township Arena did by a significant amount. Not quite as many as both the Tri-Township and the Caradoc Community Center, correct?
The new site has 210 spots. Tri-Township Arena currently, I want to say it was 108 off the top of my head, might be more than that. Caradoc Community Center currently, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was a significant number. And then West Middlesex Memorial Center had 217 spots. So if you compare, because you can compare West Middlesex and this new facility as similar facilities with a single sheet arena and a gymnasium and meeting rooms and so on, you could say that those two are comparable. And then you would have overflow parking at the old Tri-Township Arena site when you have the Bulldogs in the finals, or you have the skating show that's going on, where you're going to need more parking for those 3 or 4 events a year.
Yep. So I think it was important to note that there are options there to make sure there's sufficient parking for any type of event that could go on, or multiple events at the same time. Comments about the preferred iterations. So there were 3 comments. Happy with rec center concept, highlighted need community center, soccer fields, and hockey. The rec center concept looks like the best option. I like the rec center concept, it's the best idea. Mayor Grantham, I think you had something you wanted to add at this point about the iteration?
About,
Or it was Greg?
was Greg, yeah, no,
Go ahead, Greg.
sorry, Greg.
Yeah, the only comment I had was on the preferred iteration. I had a couple comments on the separate where we had the two, it's not preferred iteration, but it was the different one where we had the two separate lots. And the question that I got back on that was, why could they not share parking? Why did they have to be two separate with each their own full parking spaces to kind of save some of that room? I don't know why we had to sever them and have them not connect with each other.
Stephen, do you have an answer for that by any chance, or?
This is where I wish Mike was here. Every lot has to be considered on its own under bylaws. It's just the way they work. I mean, public owned land, you might be able to argue that the parking spaces across the street can be counted. And again, in the end, we have to satisfy ourselves as a design committee that we do have enough parking spaces for those big events. I think one of our options showed one of the soccer pitches actually being all parking lot, and more building being added on. So there is the beauty of this site is we can expand, but at the cost of the soccer field. But I just to reiterate, having a public facility park already in the city, already in the town, and keeping the arena and community center here is huge for the community to maintain that heritage and history of the site as being a place to gather. That's huge. Trying to restart that heritage on a different lot is always difficult. But so I don't know if I'm screwed around the question there, but
So basically, you're saying that as you're looking at a specific piece of property, you need to make sure that the parking exists for the function of that building on that property and not a combination of properties.
and there are ways around that, but that is the broad principle that we almost always follow. I think that's the right way to say it. Because you're a municipality, you actually have more flexibility. You can say, well, no, that park is ours as well across the street, so we're actually sharing parking between the two. If you were commercially doing that, you'd actually have to have things on title declaring it. Because you're a municipality, you can probably not get hooked into that level of legality. That's what I would say. The reality is the other thing is we can put a lot of parking along that street, on Lions Park Drive if we want to. There's the easiest place to add parking at fairly minimal expense, actually.
Does that satisfy your question, Greg?
Kind of, but it wasn't a preferred iteration anyways, but I think that the answer that kind of answered it was that we had to do each building separately, and that was why we did that iteration, which isn't a preferred iteration, so we don't need to spend a lot of time on that, but I think that was a decent answer.
All right, did you have anything to add? No? Perfect. So comments regarding the current Caradoc Community Center. Why are we losing the Caradoc Community Center? Mount Brydges will have no center to hold events for Lions Club, Optimus Club events, comedy, dances. Keep existing community center and rent it out at a reasonable rate and not such a high cost so people will use it. Keep the current community center, use the community center space, keep part of the community center to host community events, gathering of our community. Again, comedy night, dances, fish fry. Save the 500 bricks along the memorial wall, along with the memorial wall, and take brick donation wall out and move to new complex. So just for the community's sake, the memorial wall definitely will be something that will be removed if the Caradoc Community Center is torn down and placed in the new facility. The bricks, I had somebody say to me that they want to take their parents' brick home with them. So maybe we can do a number of options, offer it to families if they want the brick, or if they want to move to the new facility, or are we going to sell new bricks or whatever, right? So certainly the discussion is being had about what to do with those, and they're not just going to be discarded at any rate. Did any members of the committee have anything to add to those comments?
Just wanted, thinking about the rented out at a reasonable rate. I don't think we want to be competing with private business. When I think of the golf courses and the wedding venues that have got into business specifically, I don't think we want to be undercutting their rates and their markets. I think, as Director Lilborn said, let's just keep it at a reasonable, fair rate, market rate like we do today. So I don't like to see us compete with private business.
And again, for those items that they listed, would be able to be held in the design as it was put forward. Again, just a different shift in to think that, maybe it's not in the banquet hall, maybe it's in the gym, or maybe it's on the rink floor, or as the population grows, maybe the popularity of those events grows and it needs bigger space. There's lots of different ways that those facilities can be used. So, Craig, did you have anything to add? No. Comments regarding construction. Stop dragging your feet and get going on this facility before I'm too old to play. Keep the older arena running until the new one is complete. Keep Tri-Township operational while building. Ensure the design is completed in full. So the last comment there, I did have someone who put forward a very compelling argument to say that if it's going to cost $30 million to build, then maybe you should just build the rink and have lobby space and leave all the other pieces out. So maybe I'll have Stephen speak to why that's maybe not possible, or what the challenges would be to do that.
We can do it whatever you guys decide, and your team decides for us to do. Yeah, I mean, the cost per square foot, if you decide to cut back the program, you don't get it, the straight pro rata, you get 70, 50 cents on the dollar for the space you cut off, right? So you have to decide early on what your program is going to be. The comment before, flexible, was very good. That's what the center is, very flexible the way it's designed right now. And if you don't build it now, you don't build it. That's my reality. You can always talk about phasing. Phasing is very hard to do. I would say that option is good. Just to speak back to the last points about the bricks and the memorial wall, we'll take your direction on that, but that's not difficult for us to incorporate. Plus the fact you may want another donation wall set up as well. So that would be part of something we would incorporate into the design of the project. Not in an active hall this time, but more in the public spaces that are leading to the hall. So that, because right now that is sort of in an inappropriate location for an active gym space. So, but that sort of stuff. So, yeah, either build or go big or go home. Because it's always frustrating when you start cutting back a program, and then you realize later we should have just done it. That's been my experience.
It's never cheaper. It's never cheaper to work.
Yeah, and of course, it's going to be designed differently. It would purposely have to be designed differently to be expandable, which in the end is going to cost more money. I'm of the same vein of thought that if the price tag is that big, even if we were to just build the arena, the price tag is still going to be a lot higher than what we were anticipating 2 or 3 years ago. And then to go ahead and ask the community for another $10 or $12 million to build the pieces that we had chopped off, I would see that as being a very difficult sell.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the arena is your expensive square footage. The more expensive square footage is the arena.
Okay.
The other spaces are much more affordable.
That's good to know.
Yeah, I learned something.
Craig, did you have any thing to add about those comments? No. I know the mayor's been a good advocate about moving the process forward and let's get moving on it. But it is deep breath the municipality will have to take to make that financial commitment to build that piece of property, so.
Well, part of moving the process is having the discussion, correct, Councillor?
Yes, yes it is. So just general feedback, great job, thank you. There was some negative feedbacks, no, please no. Doesn't matter what we say, the council will do whatever they want. Just remember, we the citizens built the community center, not the town council. I think we also need to consider the hands that so graciously gave so much to my Brydges. The Lions group has given so much to this community, and to keep crowding in and around on what they work towards is not right. Another location needs to be considered. So I think we probably all talk to those people, because I know they made the rounds for sure that night. You know, I think part of the reason that we had that open house was to make sure that we can engage the community and get the vibe for if that's a project that the community can get excited about, or if it's dead in the water before we even start. So to say that we're gonna do whatever we want, irregardless, I don't think is true. That's why we went to the public, and we'll probably go to the public again before our decision is made. Greg, did you have anything else to add to that? Do you feel in any way in this process that the community can be more engaged?
I think when we get closer to it, and actually having some costing and looking at fundraising and community involvement, we should probably bring some community members onto the board to just talk about how the community can be engaged, get some of those groups involved. But I think at present, I don't know if there's much more way they could get involved than what they are right now.
Just, Councillor, on the last comment about the Lions, and I appreciate that and respect that, because they're looking at it with the current Tri-Township arena, but I think once the current arena comes down, it's gonna open it up. It'll be more open, correct? And there'll be something else there that will add to the whole Lions Park, and tell them that, you know, current arena comes down and who knows what could be there to add to the whole experience.
Well, I know that Lori and I have been, partaking in some ice cream and going down to the West Middlesex Arena, because I'm very curious to see how all those functions together are playing out. And it's incredible. Any given night, there's always 40 or 50 people there. Lots of people using the basketball courts. There's always a ton of kids in the playground with their parents. So to see that kind of activity in my Brydges, I think would be an amazing success story when you're piecing all the things together. So I think that's the goal, right? We want to have something that the community will use as a whole, and not be a place that a lot of the time sits empty or not used. It's not just lawn space. It's utilized court space and activities and functions that don't currently exist in the village of Mount Brydges, in the current public spaces that we have. All right, so I had some options here as to what our next steps would be, but again, with only 3 people here, I don't think it's appropriate for us to be making any recommendations to council to move forward. Stephen, did you have anything to add about what you would see as an appropriate next step for design purposes?
Well, I think Rob already mentioned the geotechnical, the soils, the environmentals, things that need to be done. We'd probably do on the existing building, we need to do a hazardous material study, find out what's there, if there's any hazardous materials, because you're gonna demo those, you know that. Actually, I'm probably on the same on the other one as well. And then design-wise, ideally we would continue the design process, work out plan and get into 3D and start saying, here's what the building is gonna look like. And then that moves to site plan approval. Each of these stages has to be approved to go ahead. design to see if it works. That's architecturally what needs to happen next. We know that we've got enough servicing to the site that I'm not too worried about that part of the discussion. So, yeah, it's the only servicing. So.
Rob, I'll let you answer first, and then I'll give my thoughts.
I was just gonna say, in conversation with Mike Holt, he has shown an interest in meeting with staff and staff alone to finish the internal floor plan. Because staff are the ones that are going to need to be operating this building. And I'll just give a perfect example is we were doing one tour, and perfect example is Listowel. The only janitor's closet in that building was off the lobby at the far opposite corner of the dressing rooms. So they ended up building a makeshift janitor's closet in one of the storage cabinets underneath the stands. So Mike wants staff to be involved to finish provide the final floor plan. Of course, it's going to have to come to this committee for final approval, but he wants staff to have their input to make sure that the kitchen goes beside the gymnasium, beside the meeting room, opens out into the lobby, but then, okay, now we've got washrooms all the way on the opposite side of the building. So if staff look at it, say, okay, well, maybe we put the male washroom on one side, the female washroom on the other, or so on and so forth. So he wants that ability to do that. I don't want to spend any money. As soon as I start doing geotechnical, start doing a site survey, designated substance surveys, all those cost money. Unless someone's committed to this site, I don't think we should be spending money, because we're always looking for money. So I know what it costs to do all of that for the fire hall, and this is even a larger site. So until there's some direction from council to move forward, I really think our next step is really kind of small, and it's meeting with staff to finalize that floor plan and then bring it back to this group. While we're doing that, we can continue to work on those 3D renderings and get to some conceptual designs. But outside of that, I don't know if we can go much further.
In my opinion, I think our next step is that we have to ask council, and that may be as part of the multi-year budget process, are they willing to make a commitment for this?
I'll turn off my microphone, because that was going to be my suggestion too.
Which unfortunately is going to be a time lag, because I don't anticipate that multi-purpose budget process will be done before Christmas, or maybe we'll be done before Christmas, but it'll be somewhere around that time frame anyways, which is going to leave a significant gap of time as far as the public is concerned. For us, it will probably go by very quickly, but from the public's perception, it's going to seem like nothing is happening. But for that kind of financial commitment to be made before we can start doing some of that site prep work, and
you have $500,000 earmarked for this work in Brydges. So there's enough money there to continue to move on with geotechnical surveys, DSSs, all of that. There's money set aside to do that work. There's not capital dollars to build the building, but we have funds to actually do all of the background work while we're waiting for council to say, go ahead.
I think, again, given some of the things that have happened in the past couple of years in Brydges, some that was the township's doing it, and some that wasn't, I think council should make the decision, full council should make the decision to do that geotechnical work.
Sure.
And then that way, as far as transparency is concerned, it's a decision that the entire council's involved with, and nobody can say that they weren't informed, they weren't given the opportunity to voice their opinion. That's kind of my thoughts on it.
No, and sorry, through you, I agree with your thoughts, and I think you're right, and that's where I was going to. It's a council decision, the multi-year budget is coming up, but if we could garner the entirety of council's support to at least do the the site plan, because that may change the whole equation. We expect it's going to be okay, but it could change everything, correct? So if you're comfortable, Chair, have it on the agenda for the next council or the second one out to do the geotech, because that may change the whole conversation.
I would agree. I know for another project that I was involved in that had nothing to do with council, you know, the geotechnical work had to be done before we could even move forward with what we thought could be a design.
Yeah.
So I would agree that I would prefer to spend that money now and go ahead and do it.
Right.
But I think that's a question that the full council has to decide, even though it is in budget to be done.
Can you have majority of the committee tonight. You could make a recommendation to council to direct staff to continue on with the site works at 565 Lions Park Drive, which would include geotechnical, site survey, designated substance surveys of Tri-Township Marina, Caradoc Community Center. Am I missing anything, Michael?
Stephen?
Or sorry, Stephen?
As Mike's would say. Yeah, and probably, now is the design exploration not to be voted on? That's the only other thing you missed.
Right.
I think you picked up all of it. And I guess, I don't know, we might need to bring in our mechanical, electrical, just so they can talk to the local utilities, just to make sure that everything is available. But that's a real quick check, I would think.
Yeah. So when you talked about the final design stuff, I missed what you said there. Before you talked about the mechanical.
So just like the conceptual design, where we talk about putting this into 3D, talking with staff, I think that's, the next stage after that would be the decision to go into working drawings.
Yeah.
But we don't want to go there until we've had all these other studies done, to verify that nothing we're proposing has a roadblock.
I also don't think you want to go there until the council's made a decision that that's what we want to actually move forward on. Yeah.
So just to summarize, if the recommendation could include directing staff to geotechnical site survey, the DSSs of the two facilities, and to continue on working with A-Link on the conceptual design and layout of the facility.
Yeah, so I think, so the next stage after that would be to proceed to site plan approval, which is formally putting it to is a precursor to getting shovel ready. I mean, that's, if the goal is to go shovel ready, at some point you actually have to have working drawings, you have to have site plan approval.
Right.
There's just a whole juggernaut of stuff that we're not ready to commit to yet, clearly. And we wouldn't recommend that right now. We would say you need to get through these next stages to make sure that we can give you as a committee enough information to make a recommendation to council to move and continue on to the shovel ready. So I think there's probably, what do you think, Rob, one or two more votes, as it were? I mean, the vote being the official recommendation to council stuff.
Yeah, I think before we even want to consider site plan approval, we're going to want to do all of that stuff that I said. And then council will make the decision. Once we get, if we continue on the path, Stephen, I believe we could probably have conceptual design by September or October. I hope I'm not putting Michael under the gun, but
He doesn't like vacation, and he doesn't like sleep, so.
So
Those are important things.
Yeah. So I remember, I believe I said we could have conceptual design within 6 to 8 months. If we continue going down the path, we can probably achieve that. That will get us to September, October, then you only have a couple months delay between then and your multi-year budget. Versus if we stop now, you've got 6 months. Well, 5 months.
So do you need somebody to make a motion, or can you just make the recommend?
Greg had a question.
Go ahead, Greg,
first.
sorry.
Yeah, my question was, I agree with everything that's been said as in like the meat of the motion and what we're asking for. My question is to this committee, do we want to say that we are direct to council or that we're asking for council's input? I think that first bit is very important over whether we're asking whether council wants to go forward or whether we're recommending that they do go forward.
I think the ask is, while the decision about what kind of project we're moving forward on will be done during the multi-year budget process, in the time being, can we do some of the background work that needs to be done to see if a project of that scale and scope is even possible on that piece of property?
Yeah.
I think that's not the exact wording of the motion, but that's the ask, is let's go ahead and do that background work so we don't have any surprises that we get the community all excited that we're moving forward on a massive, probably the largest community project that's ever been done in Mount Brydges, and then to go, oops, sorry, we can't do that because like that would be a disastrous mistake.
And also to be fair to our fellow councillors, we go to them, make sure what
Yeah.
we're gonna ask them can actually happen on that site.
Does that make sense, Craig? Yeah. Okay.
The other item is, if we continue moving forward, we get to conceptual designs and 3D renderings, when the multi-year budget is finally approved and this project is positive, is included, we're ready for fundraising. Right? We've already got all of our visual aids created. So if we stop now, then we're still gonna be 3 or 4 months behind once we get council approval for budget.
All right, so, did you write down what Rob said?
I hope so.
Are you that good?
Oh,
Just say yes.
Okay, I will not say I am that good, but, so yes, just to clarify that the recommendation to council, to be clear, okay, is that staff be directed to continue the background work with A plus Link Architecture, including the geotech, the site survey, DSS for both buildings, and the design and layout of the facility,
And 3D renderings.
and 3D renderings.
Would you wanna put the caveat in there, would you wanna put the caveat in there in preparation for multi-year budget or just leave that?
Well, I think we can introduce that verbally.
Just verbally?
Yeah.
So they know what we're doing?
All right, so I'm looking for someone to make that motion. Made by the mayor. Greg, you're in favor of that? Super. So am I.
So, just a question on how this gets to council and how quickly it gets to council, because how these minutes, how that recommendation would get to council typically we would wait for the minutes to get approved at the next meeting, which could be 2, 3, 4 weeks away. Then it gets put on the next council meeting after that, so it could be 2 meetings, 3 meetings before it gets onto the council agenda.
Considering the entire committee is made up of members of council, I think we can further that step. Bring it to
So would you
council.
like me I can write a quick report tomorrow morning, get it on the agenda for the meeting on Monday night. Is that possible?
I believe so.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, I mean, in real world terms, the ask isn't that big.
No.
Right? We're not making a decision. We're not committing the municipality to spending tens of millions of dollars. What we're saying is, we think this is the path we want to go, but we need to check to make sure that it's possible.
Right.
Yeah, I'll pull together a quick report tomorrow morning. I'll send it to you, say by 10 a.m.
Yep. Okay. All right, any other comments about the open house? Stephen, did you have anything to add?
It was really nice to see a good turnout. We were trying to guess between ourselves with 4 people or 40 people, so we were quite pleased with the turnout. We go both into open houses where 4 people show up, so it's a rough night. It's a long night. This was much more fun. People were interested and engaged. I think that was, even when they disagreed, they were still engaged. And some of the questions they had, you could talk about, especially with the existing building, just helping people understand its purpose, it's reached the end of its usable life cycle. That was, I think, helpful for some people to hear. And I think, you know, say honor the Lions Club or whoever was behind that this is a great facility that's done a good job, but it's no longer going to be the next stage of life. So that's probably maybe more of a narrative as you go out. That's to honor them in that, but yeah, it's just, there's no way to update it nicely.
Well, in my experience of being on council, when we built Gemini, we just decided we didn't do a big public open house thing. So I think in terms of having community input, you know, getting input in Mount Brydges is never an issue. They're always engaged. So I was happy to see the turnout as well. I think there were lots of people who were looking at what we had put with an open mind. They were very interested to see what we had talked about and why the decision had come to the way it was. And when we explained it, I think they were generally positive about what we had gone to date so far and appreciated being asked what their opinion was. So, alrighty. So we have no reports of subcommittees or new business. Does either of you two have any new business you want to bring up for this committee? Any comments you want to make? No? Then our next meeting, I guess, is to be determined.
I don't see any reason to meet until we find out what council,
Yeah.
The direction we get from council. So it'll be a call of the chair.
Yeah, okay. Dan, you have to make a decision on this. All right, then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Made by Greg, seconded by Colin. I'm in favor too. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.